This is the Pipkin and Turnbull Show. How's everybody doing today? It is October 29th, 2020. We are in episode 27 today. And before we go any further, big shout out to the LA Dodgers, our new NBA
Yes.
MLB World Series champions. I was hoping for Tampa Bay, to be honest, but anyways, kudos to LA for being the World Series winners for this year. So if you're baseball
Yes.
fans, I'm sorry. That's about all we will say today. Uh, uh, that's about as far as our knowledge goes.
Yes.
So
Yep.
Jamie, what is our rundown for today?
All right. So starting this week, we're gonna take a look at each division and predict who's gonna come out on top, and maybe if there's a wild card contender in that division. So first up, for this episode is going to be the infamous NFC East, and then it's two a time. Good call for the Dolphins on benching Fitzpatrick. We'll discuss that. And then we'll look at the best and worst things that we saw this week and also highlight some upcoming matchups that we think would be good for everybody to watch. So, with that, NFC East, man, uh, what's your overall take with this division?
Yeah, and as always, you guys aren't going crazy in the background if you're hearing
Yeah,
babies grunting or chihuahuas scampering around.
yeah,
That is in our household, so if you hear that, you're not going crazy. So, yeah, no, as terrible as the football has been, it's great to talk about.
yes,
Because you and basically every other division you're kind of seeing some clear which teams are better, which teams are playoff bound. Right now it's all up for grabs in the NFC
yeah.
East. We literally have the top 3 teams. Each are at 2 wins, and the only reason that the Eagles are atop of the division is because of their tie.
Yeah.
So it's been a while since we've seen standings like this, and the only time I can kind of remember something like this is actually when the AFC West, when the Chiefs, Oakland, and Denver, and the Chargers were all kind of down. They were all kind of in this weird tie. I think it was like even the year when the Chiefs only won 2 games, that season, or something
I
like that.
think the one I'm thinking of is 2011, where like the division winner went 8-8 or something like
Yeah.
that.
So
Yeah.
we may even we may see like one time I believe St. Louis won the NFC West with 7 wins.
Yeah.
So it may just be a 7-win season for the division leader in the NFC West. So, bad football, but it's interesting football, especially
Mm-hmm.
when you watch head-to-head matchups to see, like we got with Washington's and Cowboys, where Washington comes up on top. Um, and one thing I will say about Washington, I think out of all these teams kind of looking future bound, kind of once they get their quarterback situation resolved, they may
Mm-hmm.
have future thinking just with some of their, especially their defense and some of their weapons that they are picking up on offense. In the future, they may actually be somebody to watch out. Next couple of years, the
Yeah.
way that that Riviera's kind of turning that kind of, or the whole cultural organization's kind of changing around for Washington.
Yeah.
What's difficult is in we talk about Jamie a lot about us picking quarterbacks, you know,
Mm-hmm.
um, and even though, and I still think it's Carson Wentz. The Eagles may pull out the division just based on Carson Wentz. The problem is for the Eagles is they literally don't have any wide receivers that can offer any type of threats, and I think that's been some of the
Yeah.
issues that you've seen in this Eagles offense.
Mm.
With Alshon not really performing like he did when he first arrived to Philadelphia,
Mm-hmm.
and then no, like I said, there really isn't a wide receiver on that team that you're like that you worry about going into those games. But I think for all that has been said about Carson Wentz and about this team, I think he has performed well.
Yeah.
And so honestly, if Washington, gets the type of play that they're getting from Kyle Allen, it may come down to the Eagles and Washington. As kind of my
Mm.
first glance at it. What were your first thoughts about it?
Man, so to me, like I would say, if you're looking at it on paper, I would say Dallas is the team to beat. Because they've definitely got the most talent. But the Eagles are only a couple years removed from their Super Bowl, and that's what's so crazy to me is this their team hasn't changed all that much since they won the Super Bowl. And I mean, Foles was the quarterback because Wentz was hurt, but this division just as a whole just doesn't make sense, because this is a very talented division. It's just they just can't put the wins together, and it's just so crazy to me that one of these teams is going to host a playoff game, and we could get something like back in 2010, I want to say, when Seattle won their division with like a 7-9 record, and then they beat the Saints. They hosted the Saints and they beat
Right.
the Saints. That's when we got the Beastquake run. So could one of these teams like rattle off a win? Sure, we've seen it before, but like I it's just so crazy to me that one of these teams is going to host a playoff game. Um and I would say going forward, I would Washington's definitely my favorite to win it. Cuz I like their coaching. I like Ron Riviera, and I like if they put in Alex Smith, and if he's even just a little bit what he used to be, I think that could benefit them. Um, but it's just this division is just crazy. I'm just looking at all these numbers and like it just doesn't make sense, like how they are so
Right.
bad. And a question that I've seen floating around is, should the NFL relook at their playoffs? Should teams, even though they win the division, should a 7-9 team or whatever they're, honestly, I'm putting a ceiling at like 5 wins for these teams. Like, I don't really see them, cracking an 8-8. That would be great if they cracked an 8-8, or even 7 wins. But should a team that win total is less than their losses, should they be allowed to be in the playoffs? That's a question I've been seeing all over social media, and I think that's something the NFL needs to look at, because if they're wanting competitive football, putting one of these teams in the playoffs is not going to be very competitive. If you put one of these teams against a Green Bay, what's going to happen? They're going to get destroyed. You put one of these teams against Tampa Bay right now, what's going to happen? Tom Brady's going to pick them apart. Like, and I think that's something that the NFL needs to look at. And, but at the same time, you win the division, you've earned that playoff spot. Whether it be your wins, or whatever your record is, you won that division. So you have earned that chance to host the playoff game. So it's really crazy, just that these teams are the way that they are, and playoff football is going to be crazy. But as of right now, Washington, I would say, is my team that I think is going to come out on top. But the Eagles and the Cowboys play this weekend, so I think this picture is going to get
Yeah.
it's going to look a little different unless they tie, which with this division it wouldn't surprise me if they tied. Um, but yeah, it's there is no clear cut winner in this division. Heck, the Giants aren't even
Right.
out of it yet. All the Giants got to do is win one game, and they're back in the thick of it. So it's just crazy. You look at some of the other divisions in the NFL, and you're starting to see someone pull away, or you'll start seeing, all right, these two teams are the teams to watch. And with this division, it's like I don't know, like whoever can just not suck for like one weekend can win this division. It's crazy to think about.
Well, I guess to counteract your point about the playoffs and division and wins, I've always been a fan of divisional playoff bursts
Mm.
myself. Uh, and simple case is the Seahawk game that you brought up,
Yeah,
uh, and uh, and that's what I a fan of, like, for the NBA as well, because you know say if underwhelming Heat in the season, and then you get the Heat team that showed off in the playoffs,
yeah,
just for
yeah,
example, so I like divisional playoff bursts
yeah.
in all sports, just because even if you have a team that is slightly had a horrible record, they still have an
Mm.
opportunity, you know.
Yeah,
Uh,
teams get hot. Teams
yeah,
get hot at the right time, and that the playoffs might be the right time for
yeah, and
one of these
and
guys to just get hot, and before we know it, an 11 team in the playoffs
yeah,
or in the NFC Championship.
the
Like
nice thing is
it's
that
crazy.
the NFL is going to add that seventh team in this year,
Mm.
so
Yeah,
um, so
it won't be one of these.
no, it won't be an NFC. Yeah, you only get one from the NFC East. That's as nice as the NFL can
Yeah.
be to the NFC East. Um, but what I would say, just for teams that I've always, I've never liked tanking for players, and I
No.
wouldn't say that any of these organizations are trying to do that. Um, I would maybe look more so at the Jets, uh, but uh, uh, but I would like somehow for the draft to maybe be different compared to what playoffs look like. Anyways, that's a totally separate topic for a different
Yeah.
day. But yeah, you brought up, and we were talking about before we came on, the culture of the Cowboys, and we were gonna get into that a little bit. And you were going to talk about the Andy Dalton hit. My big thing with the Cowboys is what I've observed for the last couple of years is they have the weirdest culture. Whatever team play is not there. Um,
Yeah.
and what Jerry is creating is that he has said, have basically has taken care of his players so much to the point to where I think they're taking advantage of this ownership, because
Mm.
Jerry will pay his players no matter how they perform.
Yeah.
We can sit here and talk about the Garretts, the McCarthys, the Phillips, all of that, but if you can't change the culture of that team, you're going to see efforts like this from the Cowboys years after years. I mean, that's
Yeah.
that's the biggest difference to me between you look at the '90s Cowboys and in the early 2000s or whatever, and a little bit even a tiny bit maybe in the Tony Romo era, but even then I
Hmm.
think the culture had suffered there in Dallas. Um, but especially like I was telling you, I don't know if there's really any team first oriented guys in Dallas that I look at and be
No.
like, I see a bunch of, we've got that Dallas Cowboy jersey on, and that automatically makes us the best, you know,
Yeah.
which is that is great for ownership and marketing in Cowboys, like maybe the best
Hmm.
in the NFL in that regards, but as a team culture, that may be
Yeah.
one of the worst,
Yeah.
and so and like I told you, I think one of the worst things that we have seen is players not playing and then getting paid when even their contract is not up. You take a look. Let's take Scottie Pippen for example. As we all watched during the our quarantine, The Last Dance.
Yeah.
Jerry Rimehouse. He refused. He was like, "You signed your contract. We aren't gonna change it until the contract ends."
Yeah.
And the Bulls have 6 championships.
Yeah.
And whatever you think of that time, and I know that you have Michael Jordan just basically demanding his team to win on top of that,
Yeah. Yeah.
but there's a point to where these players, to me, what I see the Cowboys is like, either way, win or lose, if you have some sort of fame or some sort of credibility that you are untradeable, you get paid at Dallas.
Yeah.
And I don't think any of their quote unquote most talented guys are untradeable. I think you could trade all of them, because you may have to do that to change something going on there. So I know, as much as people like saying general manager, Jerry, it's Jerry's fault, all that, it's coaching's, like McCarthy taking fire. I was like, man, the players eventually have to realize that they are a talented group, and when they figure out that and want to play, that's when you can start seeing Dallas start to change. And I think, I think Dak has that in him.
Yeah.
He is the only one where I thought Dak should have maybe gotten even paid before Zeke got paid. Because and I'll be honest with you, like I said from the beginning, I said I would not pay a running back. I would draft running backs. After 3 years after the rookie contract, I would get another one, because the way that the offensives are built in the NFL, you can just pick. To me, that's what teams are doing. They can just pick up a guy, and they can have a good season. And I feel bad for the running backs, because they're incredibly talented. Like, you take a Saquon Barkley, who now his time, I think he can come back from his ACL, but you may be looking at drafting another Barkley. So I just think there's just cultural issues wrong with the Cowboys. Any other thoughts on that, Jamie?
No, I mean, I think it all just speaks for itself. Whenever you watch them, there's no heart. There's no heart on that field. There's no camaraderie. There's no brotherhood. I mean, me and you met on a football practice field. Like that. That's where our friendship began. And I can tell you straight up, if anybody would ever took a cheap shot at you, I would have been on them. And if our quarterback would have took a cheap shot, I would have been on him. Like it, and that's just how I am as a player. And I don't see that with these guys. They have that star on their helmet. They're wearing those cowboy whites. They've got the best facilities in the NFL, and that's enough for them. And the money drops in their bank account. That's it. That's and you can't win games in the NFL like that. And it shows. They're sitting at 2-5, and they're selling their players. Like I think Everson Griffin got traded yesterday. Dontari Poe got cut, and cornerback got cut yesterday. It's a fire sale right now because they have no heart. And that is probably, I always say it, and I always think it whenever I'm looking at when the season's about to begin. I always tell myself the Cowboys are the team to watch in the NFC. Maybe not the best team, but they are definitely a wild card team in the NFC. And every year, the last couple years, they have come short because they have no heart. They're there for 3 hours, and that's it. And it shows because they're losing to, I believe, lesser teams in their division.
It's getting to the point, to me, like, up straight. I mean, I could have said I wasn't. I've never been a huge Cowboy fan, and I know you would probably say that too. But now it's just getting to the point to where I'm starting to feel for Cowboy fans and Cowboys ownership. Especially the fans. Like, you have a tremendous fan base that you are doing a disservice to, like up straight.
Yeah.
When you do not perform to the levels that you are capable of. Like
Yeah.
that's who I feel bad for. So it's like I know it's like we sound like we're Cowboys bashing, but it's more like we feel for the fans, you know.
Yeah.
And that's what what we had always before the Patrick Mahomes era, we talked about with the Chiefs, and then I would more so maybe even say before the Andy Reid era,
Oh my gosh.
yeah. So
Like suffering,
yeah.
man, suffering.
So
I get it. I get it, Cowboy fans. Like this sucks, and I get it. I feel for you. You got to change it, man. Everything needs to change there, from ownership down to the water boy. Everything, the culture has to change. You have to start caring for each other on that football field. It has to mean more to be on that field than just having that star on your helmet. It has to mean more, or you're gonna be a 2-5 team that might get lucky and make the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, and look at what's happening to Kansas City right now is it's a cultural change. Like that's I would say Mahomes definitely helps that, but the whole culture around that team has changed since Andy Reid has been there.
Yeah.
It's an emphasis on winning, but he made an emphasis on team, and he was able to do that in a more, I would say he was in a more laid back environment and striving to win and striving to do it together. And that's what made, I think, Pete Carroll and the Seahawks successful and still successful, is that that they have fun winning, and they have people that want to come and be a Chief. Like I want to come and be a Seahawk,
Yeah.
And I feel like people may want to go to Dallas because they want that paycheck. And I don't feel like
they know Jerry will pay them.
Yeah, and I don't feel like they necessarily work for that, because, as much hate as Jerry gets, people abuse his good nature. Like I don't know how good, but from the outside, I'd say he's a pretty decent guy. Like Jerry Jones is a pretty decent man, So,
he takes care of his players, and he gives them the best of everything, and then they don't return on that investment. I can't think of a single Cowboy in the last 10 years that's like, yeah, that was a good return on investment. I can't think of one. And it just, that sucks for them. And I mean,
the only one I could, Tony Romo and some of his things, but then the only other one I would say is what's his name? Tight end.
Witten. And even he left. He's a freaking Raider right now.
Yeah, that's true.
Like he was like, he came out of retirement to go back to the Cowboys. And then he's like, nah, I'm out. I can't. I'm going to go join the Raiders.
Yeah.
He chose the Raiders over Dallas.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, that does say something, So.
Yeah.
But, yeah. So that's what the NFC looks like. It sounds like we're both kind of on the same page. We kind of like Washington or Philadelphia. It's a mess. But at the end of all the mess, I'm leaning maybe a little bit towards the Eagles, and you're kind of leaning Washington. But it's you could flip a quarter and see what happens next week, and that all could change, And who knows? The Giants could come back. Daniel Jones.
That's what I'm saying.
Daniel Jones, baby.
3 wins and they're in it. Like, that's crazy. So hopefully the turf monster doesn't, reach up and grab him, and he can actually score on that long play next time.
That's right. So big news happened for Miami, who had been kind of on the winning streak here late, and like we talked about, good things happening for teams, good vibes, good momentum, and it looked like that was happening for the Dolphins. Looked like nothing would kind of shake that up. But the Dolphins have already said that this week that Tua will make his first start at quarterback over Fitzpatrick. So, you know what's cool, and I know that me and Jamie try extremely hard to make sure our biases aren't known on this show. Like
Eh.
you guys have no idea that Jamie is not a Chiefs fan or Miami fan or a Heat fan. You guys have no idea about that.
No idea.
Yeah, and
I'm a
so
mystery.
I would say I try a little bit harder, but you guys all know I'm a big Bama fan, big Steelers fan. Um, so on that side, like I'm loving that I get to see Tua play again. I'm nervous. I am extremely nervous for him because he is very fragile. So I yeah, I'm hoping he looks good. Let's going back to the move. I'm excited to see this change, but to be honest with you, Jamie, I would have still given him the year. I would have still taken the Patrick Mahomes route, and
Yes.
you give this to the full. It's no matter how he looks. Like they said, he looks incredible in practice. Whatever you
Yeah.
you know, and I'm sure that was happening with Patrick Mahomes, but they stuck to the plan and said no, a year. We're gonna wait a year and sort this thing out. They got Aaron Smith right out of there. But they gave Patrick Mahomes a year, and so I was in my head. I was thinking that timeline works great for Tua because not only does he wait that year, it still gives him that time to. And I know he's definitely fully healed 100%. Like you can't be any more healed. But in a fan's head, you're like, give him that extra year just to make sure he's fully
Yeah.
he's fully good. That's kind of in the back of my head. But here's a team going off of 2 wins. But the move is weird because Ryan Fitzpatrick was playing well. The team was playing well. And now if Fitzpatrick, didn't perform well, and then you replace Tua, that makes more sense. But now you can't really go back on it without maybe calling Tua a bust, if he doesn't go out there and perform, which I don't think he would be. It's just the Dolphins aren't done building yet, you know? So that's my take on it. I know that a lot of people that I've been listening to are feeling that same way. I think everybody knew that it would be eventually Tua's team, but you let, Fitzpatrick finish this season out, or you wait to see if Fitzpatrick will, have a little bit of a slump, you know.
Yeah.
My last point about it is the thing that I am encouraged with Miami is that they do see an opportunity to win the AFC West. They are second right now in the AFC East. It's not out of the realm of the possibility that they could win the AFC East, and they are putting all their chips into play. I do like that. If you see Tua and he's doing incredible in practice, and you think he gives you the best opportunity to win, and you make that change based on that, I'm thrilled that the Dolphins do that. So that would be my only last point. Is we've been talking a lot about the culture of teams, and I think Brian Flores and the rest of the Dolphins organization are trying to do that. They had, to me, a good draft this past year. And so maybe it's that sign just saying, hey, Tua gives us our best opportunity, not only this year, but the years to come. So those were kind of my initial thoughts from it.
Here's my thing. It wasn't the right time. Um, going back to the Chiefs, because I'm not a Chiefs fan. I'm a mystery, and you guys don't know what I root for. Uh, coming out of practice, all we heard was the players talking about how, man, you would not believe these throws Patrick Mahomes is making. You would not believe what he's doing, his decision making, what he does with his eyes. That's all we heard coming out of practice when he was a rookie. But they rolled with Alex Smith. They kept rolling with Alex Smith. And could Patrick Mahomes have won that playoff game against Tennessee at Arrowhead his rookie year? Probably. I don't see why he wouldn't have. Just based on that one game we saw him his rookie year against Denver. I think with the ones, that was with backups. I think with the ones, with Kelsey and Hill and all them, we would be seeing, what we saw. But the Chiefs saw something that, all right, we're going to give this kid a year. We're going to give him a year to learn the playbook. We're going to give him a year to gel with these players, to practice with them. And then we're going to unleash him on the NFL. And that's what they did. He won the MVP. I don't get this move from the Dolphins because you're 3-1, right? They're
3-3. 3-3.
3-3.
Yeah.
Okay. So but you're still in the thick of it, man. What is that? That's second place in the AFC East, because I think the Patriots are 2-3.
Yes,
Bills have only lost one game.
Are. So the Bills are 5-2. Dolphins are 3-3 at this point.
Okay, you're still in the thick of it. You're still maybe not winning the division, but you can still be in the running for that new playoff spot. And so I think they're jumping the gun, because your Fitzpatrick had great chemistry with the offensive players. They were winning, and I think hopefully my hope is that this won't mess with Tua's growth in the NFL. That he's, because they're not a good team, but they're not a bad team. They're kind of just mid-pack. We're gonna win 8 games, 9 games at the most. We're gonna be kind of in the middle of the pack. And I don't know if Tua, what you gotta hope is that he's not gonna take a bunch of hits. That this isn't gonna mess with his confidence. This isn't gonna mess with his development. I don't, because what happens if, all right, say they're playing the Rams, okay? The Rams are a good team. His first start is against Aaron Donald, and Jalen Ramsey. You're gonna mess with this dude's psyche. All right, so say he loses the next 3 games, so now they're sitting at 3-6. All right, and now that playoff spot's starting to slip away, because you're going to have to rattle off all these wins to hopefully make that last playoff spot. Do they go back to Fitz? And do you mess with the development of Tua now? Because he's getting into a rhythm. Yeah, you're losing, but do you go back to the veteran?
Yeah,
if Tua
but
starts to slip.
So here's my only thing. The biggest question, I guess, to me is, I guess is, we've been comparing it, and it's a rightly so comparison to Alex Smith and the whole Patrick Mahomes situation. But looking on that season, the way that Alex Smith was playing, does he elevate you to a point to where the games where you felt you couldn't win, you could now win? Where I would say meaning is, when we look at the Alex Smith year, the Chiefs probably could have won those games with or without Patrick Mahomes being at quarterback, based on the way Alex Smith was playing. So now you put in Tua, and based on what you have seen, and based on because we know what Fitzpatrick is. over, the
Yeah.
14, the years that he's been playing. We know what Fitzpatrick can do.
Mm.
So now do we elevate ourselves because we're seeing some greatness and practice with Tua, and we can win some games that we couldn't have won with Fitzpatrick? So is
Yeah.
that the conversation, or does them wanting him to play this season out for them to prepare for next season with Tua starting the season fresh? So those,
Yeah.
those would be the questions of mine. But my biggest thing for starting Fitzpatrick over him is the injury,
Yeah.
and the fact that he could have more time to develop and practice, to work with NFL players, and all that.
Mm.
But so I guess part of it is where the Dolphins felt that they were at at this point, if they felt like they could find a way to get into the playoffs this year, with Tua over Fitzpatrick, and so
Yeah.
which I do believe, which I think you would agree, the timing may not be right, but Tua will elevate them to a place that Fitzpatrick never could. That
Hopefully.
I do believe that,
Yeah.
based on his talent and based on what I've seen. I mean, even the two passes, you go back and look at where he kind of played in the fourth quarter. There were some pretty. He had some pretty good plays. His two short throws,
Mm.
but he had some zip and some. His feet, everything looked good about him. So,
Yeah.
either way, I know for me personally, I'm excited to see Tua play in the NFL. I think as
Yeah.
an NFL as a whole and getting viewership and all that, I think the league is better with if Tua starting at quarterback. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's a weird move. And that's why it's been so looked at, talked at. There was even speculations that Dallas was looking to trade for Fitzpatrick. So
And that was what I was about to say. Do you, just to give Tua all the confidence in the world, do you trade Fitzpatrick? Just to be like, hey, you don't have to look over your shoulder now. We're not going to replace you with whoever they have at third string.
depending on
We're not going
how
to replace you. Do you get rid of Fitzpatrick?
depending on how Fitzpatrick is in a team environment, depending on if he is helping to mentor.
I think he is. He said he said his heart was hurt when he got the news, that he thought he was playing really good football, and so I think he's obviously sad that he got benched, especially you're 3-3, you're in the thick of the division, and so I think his feelings were hurt. Obviously my feelings would have been hurt too, but I think he's gonna do. From what I've seen on the sideline, I think he's mentoring him. He's helping Tua along the way, because Fitzpatrick knew he wasn't the long term answer there. Like he knew that after this year he was probably gone. I just think it came sooner than what he thought it would, and so I don't see any reason why he wouldn't be helping Tua along the way. I've never seen Fitzpatrick. He's never come across as a player that was like, no, I'm not gonna. It's not my job to help him. It's the coaching staff's job. He's never come across like that to me. I've never been in a locker room with the guy, but I don't see why he wouldn't be helping Tua along the way. But just to help with Tua's growth, and hey, if we go, 12 and or 13-3, or if we go 3-13, you're our guy now. We're not going anywhere else. Does it help to trade Fitzpatrick off and just let it be to a show? That's kind of where I'm at. How can you help your quarterback the most, I guess, is
Well, and
the question.
the reason I said that was that's why Alex Smith has a Super Bowl ring right now.
Yeah.
Is because of what he did to help prepare Patrick Mahomes. And so
Yeah.
um, that's why that's why I go back to, depending on how much of an influence or an effect it has on the team. Is it a better environment that he is there, or if he's gone? And I would agree with you. Is if he is helping to develop and being a great teammate, he needs to be. He's a huge help to the Dolphins organization. And the fact that, as fragile as Tua is, he may get hurt. So,
Yeah.
unfortunately, it may resolve itself. Hopefully it doesn't come to that, but that's Tua's MO. So.
Yeah.
But I feel bad for Tua because he's been all these surgeries that he's had. He's like half titanium at this point. So.
Yeah.
So we'll see. So they'd have to be breaking some titanium if he gets hurt again.
Yeah.
Best and worst thing that we saw this week. I'm gonna start off with my worst. So I know I jokingly, not jokingly, but I started off, congratulating the LA Dodgers on their win, for the World Series win. But the reason I would say it's my worst choice is MLB as a whole, because I barely knew that a World Series was being played. In fact, I barely even knew that the playoffs were going on, what teams were in them, had no idea.
Yeah.
So my thing is, what is happening to baseball? We are losing at once, at one time, this was our nation's most popular sport. And it looks like, as not a corporate, ownership or whatever league level, that things are kind of spiraling. Only negatives come out of the MLB these days. Only negative stories seem to be coming from the Major League Baseball these days. And so the worst thing I saw is mainly more of what I didn't see. Because like I said, I barely knew that Tampa Bay and LA were playing in the World Series. I still don't know who they beat to get there, all that info. Because none of Fox, ESPN, none of these guys talk. It was football and NBA. Barely even knew that playoff baseball was happening. So my worst thing is to see the decline of America's favorite sports to watch at a time.
America's pastime.
Yeah, exactly. America's pastime. It'll be interesting to see, at younger levels, high school levels, to see, because I don't think younger people have much interest in baseball these days. I definitely think it's basketball, and football is kind of losing some younger viewers too. It's kind of more definitely the NBA, reigns to me right now in high school, middle school, and elementary levels. They are what the younger generation is watching. Compared to you and me in our generation, we definitely they were football was what was being catered and what we would watch. Us growing up, so that's changing as well. So yeah, my worst thing is just I didn't know. My worst thing is MLB as a whole. On top of this little coronavirus, what not scandal, but what happened. And you may not even know about it, Jamie, but apparently there was a player for the Dodgers who they found out he had a COVID positive test. Josh Turner, I believe. He found out in the 8th inning, but he was still out there interacting and things like that.
Celebrating and all that.
I mean, listen, he was already around them, and the bigger question was, why did they only find out till the 8th inning? Stuff like that, it's only bad press over and over for MLB to hardly no press, because you can't get ratings, you can't get any viewership on baseball. So unfortunately, you've got to figure out how, and I think they've been trying to shorten the length of games to speed them up. I think that does help. with the pitch, timer, how long it takes in between pitches. But I think you're going to have to do some other clever things to bring some excitement back into the game. I don't know what it would be. I think there's possibilities, but you've got to, unfortunately, change the game to keep the game. Some of the rules, some of the way that it's played, shorten it, expand on player marketship. I don't know, because they are not reaching, elementary, middle school, and high school, and that's your most, besides people who are watching it now. To me, that's your most important demographic, is to make sure like people are watching and playing baseball. I think people are still like kind of playing baseball, but seems to me like it's kind of dying out. So the worst thing I saw is like of what I didn't see was the MLB.
Yeah.
So
I'll talk about that. I've felt for the last couple of years that Major League Baseball has kind of taken a decline. People still call it America's favorite pastime, but I would disagree. I've disagreed for that the last 5-10 years, is because the same. Like, I had no idea. Like, the same thing you were saying, man. I had no idea who was in the playoffs for Major League Baseball. But I could probably tell you everybody that was in the playoffs for the NBA, because it was constantly, if you were watching TNT, ESPN, wherever else they play, like just anywhere, if you were on Facebook, if you were on Twitter, there was, something for a playoff game for the NBA. Like, it was constantly getting pushed out. You knew Miami and Milwaukee were playing. You knew Denver was going on a tear. Like, you knew the Clippers lost. Like, that was, you didn't even have to watch it. You knew it, because the NBA was constantly bam, bam, bam. I didn't see anything from Major League Baseball.
NHL runs into this a little bit, but I would say NHL had better than the MLB, which is crazy. I think they had more coverage than and NHL is meant to be a smaller market, so you kind of expect that. But I feel like they're starting to, in my opinion, starting to bypass MLB. But that's just me.
A little bit.
I think they are.
And NHL is kind of in the same boat with me, because I couldn't tell you who won the Stanley Cup. Was it Tampa Bay? The Lightning or whatever?
I think so. Yeah. Yeah, and I would say I think. It's like I don't know for sure, And
it's not.
I knew for sure last year because of my Blues
guys. Yeah.
I pretty much stopped watching playoffs after my Blues lost. So.
Yeah. It's not because we're football first guys or basketball first guys. It's we want to bring you guys all the stuff that we can, but if it's not, making headlines and not giving us something to talk about, we're not going to talk about it, because I had no idea who was in the playoffs for them. So yeah, I would definitely piggyback that and say that was a dislike. But I'm gonna go with my like first instead of my dislike, because I've talked about my dislike a lot on past episodes. So I'm gonna get to them. My like, to no surprise to anybody, it's the Chiefs this week. They won without Patrick Mahomes having to take over the game.
They won with everything else except for Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah, he was like just a normal day at the office. 1 touchdown, 200 yards. Didn't throw it a lot. They ran it. They ran the ball. Special teams took over the game. Like, the defense did well. Like, didn't need Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah.
And that's what the Chiefs are going to have to figure out going forward, and what the Raiders really exposed is, if you limit Patrick Mahomes, you can beat the Chiefs. And I think the Chiefs, against a mediocre at best Denver Broncos team, really showed everybody, like, hey, we can run this football. We can take over the game on defense. If you make a mistake, we're going to capitalize on that mistake.
Yeah, but there's some of that, Jamie, but some of it is they're playing Denver. So I mean,
that's what I'm saying. Like, it's a mediocre at best Denver team. Like, they're not. Denver to me is a lot like what we talked about with the Cowboys. They've got the talent. I love their quarterback, Drew Lock. I think he's a good quarterback. If they're consistency, I thought for the last couple of years they need to get rid of Vic Fangio. They need to get a different guy in there to lead this team because I just don't think he's the guy to do it. And injuries have definitely throttled back on Denver because they don't have Vaughn. Bradley Chubb, man, like that dude is a game wrecker. I really like him. Not when he's playing the Chiefs, but he was in Patrick Mahomes' face all game, and so they're mediocre, but they're a good team. They're not someone that you take lightly on Sunday. So but I just like that the Chiefs, they won it, and because everybody's like, it's Patrick Mahomes' show. It's Patrick Mahomes' show. And they won it kind of without him. He didn't have like that 300-yard game like the Rams game where he threw for 400 yards, 6 touchdowns, and they lost. Like, he threw 1 touchdown, no picks, 200 yards. His completion percentage was kind of middle of the pack. Like, it wasn't an eye-popping game from Patrick Mahomes, but they still put up like 43 points. And that's crazy that, Patrick Mahomes was kind of like not a factor in that game, but they still put up 40 points against Denver. And so that's what I like, because that's just been the big question mark with the Chiefs is if Patrick Mahomes is limited, can they win? And they proved that they can, And so that's my like. That I liked that. I love Patrick Mahomes throwing for 400 yards and 18 touchdowns in a game, and running all over them and all that. I love that. That's good football to me. But I also like that the Chiefs proved that they can win if he's not on his game. So that's my like. All right.
Yeah, like I said, the only pushback I have on that would be is, and look, I think Denver. The only thing I would say is I definitely think they're less talent wise compared to Dallas. I think they have less talent because I can understand pieces still being be made for Denver. But the question is I think the offense has shown these past couple of weeks for the Chiefs that they have been struggling. And, Denver has a good defense. Like, that's the thing that people forget is, you think about if they don't have the things that happen on special teams, the Sorensen going in for a touchdown with that could have been a fairly close game. Yeah. Like, because they were figuring out the offense. The only thing I will say for the Chiefs is that the offense especially. Now, the Chiefs' defense, they did a great job coming and ready to play. I didn't feel like that definitely for the offense this week. But when they go into big matchups, like, for example, the Ravens, I know that they're ready to go against – that offense showed it, that they were ready to go against the Ravens. Yeah. And that's why they're still atop, the AFC West, because once they get to these big matchups, they're and when, Mahinmi and Reed are at their best at play calling, you can't stop this offense. And that's like my biggest worry, as a Steelers fan, people are having this conversation and people are now picking the Steelers over the Chiefs. And I'm just like, wait a second. Like, once you get into this matchup and you've got Andy Reid at his best at play calling and not suspect play calling, it's hard to beat this Chiefs team when they've got it rolling. And that's my thing with the Steelers with their big defensive backfield. But that's my only thing in question was, they seem to have kind of this struggle if Pat can't get the deep ball or something. So, but yes, it was good to see that the two other aspects of the game did win the Chiefs. They won it handedly with defense and special teams. So that is a good sign. My only concern would be like, this Chiefs offense never really got going. But then again, Denver does have a good defense. So,
yeah.
So, yeah. So I wanted to quickly tell my best of the week, and I wanted to make sure I defend my guy because Mr. Turnbull, Jamie, messaged me, um, and he kind of got it wrong on my boy Mac Jones. He texts me and he tells me, Mac Jones is just okay. So, best thing I have seen and the best thing I saw last week was his performance against Tennessee and his performance overall. Because the way he has been playing, he could be one of the 4 sitting up there for a Heisman this year. That's how good Mac Jones has been playing. You go back and watch it. He's only had one bad 2 quarters, and that was the first half that you only watched of that Georgia game. If you come back and watch the second half, the full game, you can see a great performance from Mac Jones. So, the biggest question coming into Alabama season, what was Mac Jones going to be? Could they, have better quarterback play, all that. And through his first 7 games, he had better numbers than Jalen Hurts or Tua compared to Mac Jones' numbers. That's all I'm saying. So on today's show, I want to make sure I defend some Mac Jones because he's been playing extremely well. So far, he's got almost 2,000 yards passing with 12 touchdowns already. So that was my best thing I saw is Mac Jones. So that was.
You really think he's going to be on that Heisman stage?
Oh yeah, he could be. The way he's been playing.
Oh my goodness!
Go back and watch it, man.
Oh my goodness!
Go back and watch it.
I will. And then when he's not, I'm gonna be making fun of you. And
I said a possibility.
We're gonna have a discussion.
Look at the stats.
Oh my goodness!
Caleb. All right, and
your bias is showing, sir. Your bias is showing.
Oh yeah, and your flags behind you don't. I said I had to come and do some because here's the thing. Everybody had said the problem with Alabama would be their quarterback, and it hasn't been. He's not a game manager. He is actually helping them win games. He is the quarterback after one fumble, after Najee Harris fumbled the ball. They scored every single time on offense against Ole Miss, and they needed that to win the game. Like,
but who
go
has
back.
He played?
Huh?
Who has he played?
He played the number 11 team in the country, number 3 in the country. He's played A&M and Georgia. He played what people said is the best defense, and he had one bad half where some of his throws were drops. You could ask the same thing about Trevor Lawrence.
Oh no, I'm definitely on like the who has Trevor Lawrence played. Like, nah, like to me he's not the best quarterback in the NCAA football either. Like, I'll say Clemson is pretenders to the throne, and they're gonna get smacked in the playoffs. Like, no, that's I'm not gonna get on here and defend Trevor Lawrence either. I'm just saying that Mac is not.
Who has a better QBR rating? Mac or Trevor?
I would have to look at the numbers.
Mac Jones. He is second. Trevor Lawrence is 8th right now.
Oh man.
Trevor Lawrence also has thrown fewer yards than Tua. Sorry, Mac Jones. Mac Jones almost has 2,000. And you've got 1,833 right now for Trevor. And I'm not saying that Mac Jones is better than Trevor Lawrence. I'm saying give my dude some respect. Give him some props.
I will put him in the conversation. All right.
I'm not asking for much, but he's better than okay. That was some.
I will pay. How about this? I will pay more attention to Mac, and we'll revisit this discussion later. All right. I'll pay attention. Us this in a couple weeks to see where Mac Jones is.
Yeah.
All right.
So that was my best thing. All right. What's your worst thing?
Yeah. Man, I don't even have to tell y'all. My worst thing is that team in Georgia, the professional one, because, and I would say emphasis, you know, because I would say the Bulldogs could probably beat this professional team, the Falcons. How do you lose against the Lions? All you had to do was not score. You accidentally scored. How do you accidentally score? The Lions were even going, "Yep, he scored. Like, give us the ball. It's our ball."
Yeah, exactly.
How do you keep finding all these ways to lose?
They found
Like,
they found the most ways to lose, man.
and it's so bad. And like I said, this is the best worst team because they have all this talent. They've got a good quarterback. They've got one of the best wide receivers in the game. They've got a good running back. How do you lose? Where it doesn't make sense. And then and so I was like, well, maybe Todd Gurley's never been in a situation like this. So I start looking through stuff. There was a game with the Rams where he clearly broke away and he turned before he went into the end zone and was able to keep running the clock out before he went down. So he's been in this situation before, but he's oh man, the Falcons are someone that I just love talking about because they're so bad, but they shouldn't be. And so so Todd Gurley
Right.
accidentally scores, which is hilarious. They give Matt Stafford around a minute to go down and win this game. Stafford's no slouch. He's been on some historically terrible teams, but it was not because of him. If you give that man that much time, you've lost the game.
Yeah.
Simple.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what happened. Stafford does not get enough credit when it comes to just overall quarterbacks in this league. I kind of put him in the same category as Big Ben, where, yeah, Stafford doesn't have the Lombardi, and he will probably never have the Lombardi. But Ben gets disrespected, and so does Stafford. Stafford is a good quarterback. Is he Hall of Fame worthy? Probably not. But he's a good quarterback, and they gave that man a minute to go down and beat them,
Well, yeah.
and
Well,
he
Stafford's.
did.
I mean, they've already like the Lions have already broken the Bears. You think about the Bears game, so they've already had this track record of being like, ha, we got
Yeah,
a minute left. That's plenty of time.
plenty of time. And the Falcons just keep finding all these fun little ways to lose,
Yeah, it's
and
crazy.
I
Absolutely
I
crazy.
I can tell you right now, this ain't gonna be the last time they are on my dislike list. I would like nothing more than the Atlanta Falcons to shut me up, and I won't have to talk about them anymore.
Right.
But that's not gonna happen. Um, they're terrible, and it's entertaining to watch them lose. So yeah, that's my dislike was Atlanta, as always.
Yeah.
Except last week, they weren't on my list
It's kind of
for
like
once.
what kind of curse did a New England fan put on this team? After losing the Super
Oh
Bowl,
man.
it's been like, man, what ways can we blow a lead and then lose a game? Like how
Oh
like what are the different ways that we can lose games? And the Falcons are showing us how you do it. So,
yeah.
like kudos
Yep.
to them, I guess.
Oh, man, I don't know what they got to do. Like that's more than just a culture issue. Like that's
It's a
something
bad
else.
look. I don't know.
Yeah.
Some New England curse, man.
That's like, and like New England fan went to New Orleans, found a voodoo doll, and was just
Oh
like put
man.
a falcon on it, and was just like, I'm just gonna stab this every time they're winning,
They're
and
about
then
to win. Oh, there you go. Falcons ain't
uh
gonna win no more.
nope.
Oh my gosh. Um All right, so that will basically end it for the day. Some matchups to a big matchup to watch out for is the Ravens versus Steelers
Yep.
this week. Any other thoughts about that, Jamie?
Oh man, that is I would say that's the game to watch. It's not in prime time, and I feel bad for everybody that because it's not,
Yeah,
especially in our area because it's at noon and it's the Chiefs game is going to be on over it against the
yeah,
Jets,
yeah.
and that's sad
That hurts.
because
That hurts.
everybody should be watching this game. It should have. The next one I will say is going to have the
It's
same
gotta be
stakes.
NBC. It's gotta be.
It's
It's gotta be
gotta be
Sunday night. It's gotta be
because
Sunday. This should
this
have been
is
Sunday night. This is a.
yes.
This should have been
I don't know who's playing
scheduled to
on
be a
Sunday
Sunday
night, but
night.
it's not going to be
The
better than
Steelers
this.
and Ravens, I mean, no matter how bad they are, should always be a Sunday night game or a Monday night game. Just should always be prime time, in my
Yeah.
opinion. And that's
Yeah.
that's how it's been
So,
like for years.
yeah. This is gonna be a good game. I'm
Hey,
thinking the
you know
Steelers
what
gonna come out with it.
what our
But
Sunday night matchup's gonna be?
what?
Cowboys and Eagles.
Oh my! Really?
Yep. Cowboys and Eagles
Flex
Sunday night.
that.
Yeah.
Switch them
Yep.
right now.
Yeah.
We don't want to see that Sunday night.
We don't want to see that at all.
I'm gonna watch it because it's gonna be hilarious. But
oh man, I did. You make a good point about not being able to see the Steelers game because you're right. We're gonna be watching
Yeah,
Chiefs and Jets.
and
Oh,
this
good
area is
grief.
going to be Chiefs and Jets, and
Oh,
you're going to watch the
man.
Chiefs put up like 60 points against the Jets. Wow. Oh, that's a bad Sunday night game. Oh, wow. That's sad. All right. My number 2 game to watch, I think it's going to be. I really liked how they've been playing, but I'm picking Mizzou and the against number 10 Florida. I've really liked how Mizzou has been playing ball. They're scrappy, and I think they can beat Florida. And I think that would be huge for that program right now because they've been not even middle of the pack. They've just kind of there, I guess, in the SEC. And I think this is a good chance for the Tigers to come out and kind of punch the number 10 team in the nation in the mouth and get a surprise win. But yeah, man, that's what I've got. I've got the Steelers Ravens game that we won't be able to watch, and I've got Mizzou versus number 10 Florida as games that I think everybody should watch, but won't be able to.
You got a couple classic matchups. You've got Texas and Oklahoma this week. You've got I just saw it. The other matchup I was interested in. I'm having a brain meltdown right now. It should. Anyways, it was Ohio State. Ohio State, Penn State this week. That's it. Ohio State, Penn State this week. And then oddly enough, I think Georgia versus Kentucky would be a good game too. Just because defense oriented, nothing really spectacular about the offenses, so I think it should be fairly close. So maybe Kentucky pulling out. Yeah, my thing with the Mizzou, Florida, I think Florida is going to win, maybe by several. Just because, I think I knew that, going in the Mizzou LSU game, I kind of had it figured that Mizzou could upset. And then Kentucky just couldn't figure it out their offense last week. Because their defense played extremely well against Mizzou. The thing is that Florida has a much, so much of a better offense, and I think I think where Mizzou's at is in a great spot. And I'm trying to remember Kyle Trask is the quarterback for Florida who's been playing extremely well. I don't know if it'll be necessarily close. I think they have an opportunity. I just think Mizzou on a lot of drives, are very suspect on offense. just
Yeah.
super up and down throughout these constant weeks. But definitely great direction for them. Definitely great direction
Yeah.
for them. So
Yeah.
all right, so that is our show for this week. A little bit longer, man. We had a lot to talk about. I guess we had a lot of
Yeah.
ranting to do on some Cowboys and some Falcons.
Yeah.
So we'll see you guys next week. Hope you guys have a great rest of your week. We'll see you next week.